morning, everyone.
Morning, guys.
Actually, Tom, I should ask you, is it morning where you're at?
Yes, I'm in Florida. Good morning.
Oh, you're just south of us then. Okay.
You're just south of us. Okay, got it. Yeah, I didn't even think to ask geography. We sometimes we've had South Africa, we've had London, we've had, so it's not always morning with us. So,
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, hey, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for sharing some time with us. Actually, I talked to Tom last night about this, but we explore a lot of topics on this show, some more esoteric than others, but I know shockingly little about your topic.
It was very hard because, like, we try and do research when more so if it's something we don't know. And I was like, wow, there isn't that much that we can make sense of here.
Right.
So we're excited to have you on to talk about it.
You shall be our Rosetta Stone, as it were, right? So, but yeah, I mean, and honestly, what's even more so, one of the things that candidly, there's a little bit of controversy around this topic, right? It's not universally sort of laid out there. So I'm actually even more excited to maybe hear your take on the friction that this topic seems to run into out there. So
there's going to be a lot of friction in the future. So you're a prophet. You can tell what's coming. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's just get into it. I guess give us, by way of on-ramp here, give us a little bit of how you got here, and let's take it from there.
We will speak about scalar light, scalar energy. Those are synonymous terms. That's the energy of the stars, the sun of our solar system. The stars produce this energy. So this energy is primal. It's the initial energy of the universe. And if you look at creation, the only thing that's fundamental is energy. Energy is the first. Okay. Everything else derives from energy. And that's why my research is important. I am at the apex of creation. I work with the fundamental energy of the stars. Okay. Now, what does that mean? If I work with scalar energy, scalar light, that is the instructions. That serves as the, if you will, the template for the universe. That's right. Energy carries instructions, information. And all information initiates with this type of energy. So scalar light serves as the instructions of the universe. That's correct. And with that in mind, that's important. That's, if you will, that will be our lema. That's the major premise of this argument.
So let's just take a quick pause there, right? That is a lot of information. I guess not a lot of information in terms of bits and bytes, but I guess philosophically and mechanically and whatnot, that's a lot to sort of unpack.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think actually, if I'm, dare I be so bold as to say, I think also the genesis moment for the friction that we were just talking about, right? I think there's that is where a lot of people struggle to get on the bus, right? Like,
yeah, I think, it's, everybody, I think, especially in our kind of field, wants to believe this. But like, how do you explain it? Like, how is that actually being, incorporated into like some kind of treatment, basically?
Yeah, that's fine. So how do I explain it? I prove it by functioning instruments. I'm in my laboratory for a reason. Behind me is a scalar light instrument. I'm able to control the energy of the stars.
Yeah, let's talk. What is that instrument? Like, what is it? How is it measuring that?
I'm going to show the audience. I'm going to my computer.
You had a show and tell. That's amazing.
This is a scalar instrument. Now, you'll notice there's no moving parts. So what does the instrument do? It actually creates the energy of the sun and the stars. And within that vacuum tube, we have a scalar wave. And once we can take that energy and then bring it over to the Tesla coils, it starts pulsing from those coils. This is not electricity.
Okay.
The Tesla coils are broadcasting pulsing energy to the extent it can light up a light bulb.
Okay.
Yeah. So that,
all right. Is this palpable?
Yes, I can feel it.
If you're near it, you can feel it. Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
I can feel it very much so. So this is, if you will.
So is just so I'm understanding this, is this machine sort of amplifying that to a visceral output as opposed to, yeah. So it's collecting the ambient,
Yes.
I don't know, scalar energy or whatever. Yeah. Okay.
So behind me is a miniature star. Once again, it can illuminate objects.
Okay.
That's what I have. This is a miniature star. Okay. So with that in mind,
Interesting.
I'm able to access a dimension outside of the electromagnetic dimension. There's two energy fields. I do not work with electricity magnetism. I work with quantum dimension, quantum energy. This is a quantum instrument. That's the very salient point of my research. I do not depend upon the electromagnetic spectrum. I'm in a different environment, a different spectrum.
So that spectrum at a professional level, like astrophysicist, you know, and at that level, is this sort of like a recognized energy form at that level?
It's a plasma field.
Okay.
Now, anytime you hear an
Okay.
an astrophysicist explain some stellar phenomenon, a star, as it has a plasma body. That's absolutely correct. Not an electrical body. It's a plasma body or a scalar energy body. That's what I'm working with.
Okay.
Which is emitting this energy that you're collecting. Is that
Yes,
accurate?
exactly.
Yeah.
Now,
Okay.
what's thrilling about this, gentlemen? This is free energy, clean energy from the stars. Nikola Tesla was able to harness scalar energy. This is a miniature star. Likewise, I can harness scalar energy. It's free energy. The power plant of the future will be the stars, not a coal mine, not an oil pump, the stars.
All right, so this took an interesting turn. Like, okay, so I actually kind of made the assumption that this was more of a therapeutic modality rather than a, I guess, mechanistic modality where you're actually using it.
Or is it both?
Or is it both, I guess? Yeah, I mean, there's a question.
All of the above, and it's also going to be used for transportation in the future. Remember, this is the first principle of the universe. And with that, we can, if you will, have a ready supply of energy. With that, we're able to work with a person's energy field and influence that energy field favorably. So you see a favorable outcome, soul, mind, and body. With this energy, some scientists have been able to create anti-gravity events. You can overcome gravity with scalar energy. So,
now, can I ask like a little bit more? Like, how do we generate this scalar energy in? Because I know you said you had a vacuum tube there.
Yeah.
So how do you first get it in that vacuum tube?
Very good.
I guess is my question.
My predecessor, a man by the name of Galen Hieronymus, invented the first instrument. I'm not the initial inventor. And what we both do is we take a household current and we convert it into scalar. We've discovered that electricity will convert to scalar and vice versa. It's bidirectional. Scalar will downgrade into electricity. Now, why do I prefer to work with scalar energy? Once you have a scalar wave, it does not weaken. There's no entropy. In other words, the energy that comes off those Tesla coils will find its way into the fabric of the universe and never weaken. There is no matter what the distance.
So it passes through your light bulb, it keeps on going, and it leaves our Earth and goes back into the
Exactly. Cosmos. Nothing can impede this. No physical matter can impede this.
So you're saying, like, because it's not electric, a Faraday cage is not going to impact it or anything like that?
It's non-physical. A chopping board will not stop the energy. So what's the point?
That's interesting.
This energy
to Tom's point, real quick, if you did a Faraday cage between there, would it still work? Like, will it go through that kind of thing?
Work, yes. Nothing can stop the energy.
I'd be real impressed if you had a Faraday cage sitting on your desk and you just kind of put it over there. You'd be like, what?
These real Faraday just sitting around, right?
Yeah, I just happen to have one, Matt. Thank you for asking. Here it is. Yeah. So, oh man, okay.
So I now I'm interested because now you said transportation. Are you saying that as a fuel or something else?
We will overcome gravity with scalar energy. So what's the point? Gravity is caused with scalar energy. Now, keep in mind, if scalar energy is the first principle of the universe, it is also the first principle of gravity. That's correct. Gravity is caused by scalar energy. If you negate a scalar energy force field, you experience anti-gravity. This has been done before. And so you're not going to rely upon propulsion. You simply negate gravity, and the fact that you can do that, you can transport yourself with ease without any G-forces.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So
and actually to build on Tom's question, I don't know if you followed this, but like they recently figured out sort of like the genesis block of teleportation at a qubit level. They figured out that when you deconstruct matter down to a qubit scale, you create a static, which was unpredictable. They figured out, and again, I'm sure this is grotesquely oversimplifying this, but it looks like what they did is figured out how to predict the static, and then they can filter that static out of the equation, thus reassembling the qubit on the other side. And it's in its primordial stages right now, but I'm wondering if this sort of influences that process or if it's just a completely separate parallel process.
It has to, because again, if scalar energy is the first principle of the universe, it dictates everything. Now, I'm going to boil this down, and for the scope of this conversation, we'll just concentrate on quantum health, which I call force field health. Now, to be clear, before we get into this, I never work with people. I'm going to repeat that. I've never worked with a person or an animal in my life. This instrument works with photographs of people and animals, in which I take a person's photograph, I place it in the quantum field, and now I'm enjoying a quantum session. My photograph is my bilocated version. In other words, Tom can be in two places. This is my physical being, and my photograph represents my bilocated version in the quantum field. And all of my information is downloaded to my quantum field in real time. So, what am I saying?
Okay.
Never work with a human in the flesh. Never. I work with their body double or their bilocated version, which is a force field, an energy field. Now, Matt, Tom, you're in my computer. That's your bilocated version, so to speak. You've bilocated the laboratory. I see your images in my computer. But in the flesh, you're still in your office, in your home. But your bilocated version is in my computer. Well, this bilocated version is in my computer, so to speak, in my scalar energy force field. Okay, so this is the new, if you will, way of working with health, in which we don't work biologically. We work with the energy field. Why do I prefer to work with the energy field? Energy is fundamental. Chemicals are not fundamental. I have greater command over quantum health than anybody who's working with the chemical processes. Now, keep in mind, energy is fundamental. It commands nature. Chemicals are not fundamental. They are the effect. That's the result. So I propose that we look at human health not biologically, but from force fields, energy fields. And the way I access a force field is a person's photograph. A photograph is a source of light. This is my scalar light signature, my photograph. That's how groundbreaking this science is. By the way, my work has not yet been duplicated, so it's me and only me for the time being.
So that's an interesting sort of interpretation, because I'm a photographer for 30 years, and so obviously I have a deep understanding of photography itself, and in its absolute strictest defined state, you're right. Photography is a function of reflected light, right? Yes. So it is an interesting take to align that with a scalar footprint. Because I mean, again, in a strictly defined sense, it's not incorrect, right? Like, I mean, it is sort of unarguably true. Now, I guess my follow up to that, and I suspect this is where it gets a little bit more heady. How what is the proposed way in which that reflected light will somehow find its way to your corporeal representation, right? Like, how does that happen?
We don't know. We can't explain that. And if it does, it's not our electromagnetic being, it's our scalar being. Now, keep in mind,
Okay.
Scalar energy instrument, it never interfaces with the electromagnetic spectrum. So modern day science only considers the electromagnetic spectrum, including for medical science. My contention is there's two force fields, and this is why medical science is limited. They're working at the chemical level, the electromagnetic level. I work at the informational level, the scalar energy level, which can command nature. So I don't want to work at the level of effect. I want to work at the level of cause, the scalar energy. Now, if my work is ever proven, it will prove that I, with this instrument, access a person's scalar energy force field. Medical science.
So, question on that. Well, question on that point: how would you envision somebody proving or disproving you?
Yeah, like kind of quantifying therapy.
Like how would I do that? I want to prove you wrong, right or whatever, right? Like, how do I even go about doing that?
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult. Let me explain.
I get that sense. Yeah. But
it's very difficult. This energy is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. So there's no basic.
Yeah.
You cannot measure something that's infinite. This is the energy of God. It's omnipresent. There's no basic unit. There's no liter. There's no Newton. There's no Gauss. This is infinite energy. So you cannot measure it. Secondly, we have to develop, if you will, an understanding of this new science to measure it or to judge it by this new science. Nobody can judge my work by electromagnetic theory. This is not electromagnetic energy. So many people look at my work.
So if we took an EMF meter to the machine, nothing would show up then?
Correct. By that Tesla coil, there's no electromagnetic energy. It's nullified.
Okay.
Many times, if I have my cell phone close to the Tesla coil, it's nullified. If I brought this computer any closer to the instrument, it might disrupt our computer signal. Why? Because the computer only recognizes electromagnetic energy. That's very good.
You know what's interesting about this, Tom, and let me take a half step sideways here, because I don't know if these are related, but I'm not a big believer in coincidence. And literally yesterday, I had a conversation with somebody who made an attempt at explaining the placebo effect. And his explanation was an energetic one, right? He said, if I have cancer or an illness or a malady of any kind, my body is producing an electromagnetic expression of illness, which, if my brain believes strong enough that it is not reality, that my brain will endogenously create a counter signal to that signal naturally and without further instruction or exogenous instructions to create this endogenous, signal that will basically negate my cancer, my whatever, right?
Yeah.
It kind of feels like we're dancing in a similar dance here with this, in just maybe in different terms.
What's the placebo effect? It's mind over matter. A thought is a scalar wave. Why can the mind move matter? Because the instructions are scalar waves. Just consider a thought or a feeling. What is that? It's a scalar wave. It's non-physical energy. It's not electricity. A thought permeates the universe instantaneously. What does scalar energy do? It's an instantaneous communication system. So in order to have a thought or feelings, you have to have the suitable environment. You must have a model that will match that, which is an infinite instantaneous model. In order to have instantaneous thought, you have to have an instantaneous model, scalar energy. That's simple.
And so I guess is it the assertion that entire entanglement and relationship with the world, the universe at large, is bidirectional to, say, your photograph or this computer screen?
Exactly. Now, we've heard that term quantum entanglement. Many physicists or scientists have seen two objects separated can still speak to one another, communicate at a vast distance instantaneously. If a thought's instantaneous, then quantum entanglement is instantaneous. What's the underlying theory? Scalar light, scalar energy. So you cannot have instantaneous communication with electricity. The electromagnetic spectrum has a limit, 186,000 miles per second. When two particles separated by light years can have an instantaneous communication, that is not an electromagnetic event. That's scalar energy. And once the science,
so you say
there's two energies. Once the world of science realizes that there's two energies and hence there's two explanations for the universe, then we will make some progress.
But we're human beings here, right? And we're all on existing on a mortal plane, and we have to call a rock and a tree, and we have to have a unit of measurement for kelvins and newtons and Gauss and all this stuff, right? So while I'll take you at face value on the fact that we don't have a unit of measurement for this, I think that ultimately we can't make progress in anything if it doesn't have a label or a unit of measurement on it. And I guess my question is how do you see that sort of unfolding? Because I kind of feel like it wouldn't ever come to light unless somebody called it something. Most notably, the guy looking for a Nobel Prize in discovering it, right? Like, I mean, that dude wants to put his name or her name on that unit of measure for sure. I mean, hell, you might be that guy, right? Like, what it's called, the Paladino, right? Yeah. Like a Paladino unit, like, you know.
But that's kind of. Let's look at the. Let's look at the science here. This energy permeates the universe instantaneously. Why? Two particles that experience quantum entanglement will communicate instantaneously. Okay. Can we measure something of an instantaneous value? No, it's infinite. You with me?
No.
If it had a time to it,
right,
cycles per second, a frequency, we could measure it. Can you measure something that's instantaneous? No. Can we measure an instantaneous universe? No. So not to dissuade anybody's curiosity, but there's no basic unit to scalar energy. I've never heard of it. Why? It's infinite. How can you measure infinite? Cannot.
Well, maybe you can't measure the speed because you're right, but we can't measure dark matter right now either. We don't even know if it actually exists. We just postulate that there's got to be something in that void
out there, yeah,
right. Which is why we're caveman like calling it dark matter. It's not even a real phrase, right? It's kind of like like, and so, I mean, is it not plausible that we're just sort of in the same spot with scalar energy? We're just like too crude to even have vocabulary for it yet.
You're right. It's a new science. We need a new vocabulary. And dark matter might be quasi-explanation for scalar energy, or what they call antimatter. I will say this. My instrument is non-physical. It works with non-physical energy. I am not working at the chemical level. There's no element on the periodic table involved. There's no electrons or protons. This is consciousness. This is intelligence. Now, going back to an earlier discussion, can you measure consciousness? No. Can you measure intelligence? Well, this is not an IQ test. No, you cannot. These are abstract considerations. Okay, consciousness is abstract. But I'll give you a for instance. When I work with people, people say, "Tom, help me out. I have the Epstein-Barr virus." Okay. Well, what do I do? I take a photograph of Epstein and I match it up with a person's photograph. I place these two in the instrument simultaneously. Now, remember, there's quantum entanglement in the scalar energy force field. So if I had the signature of Epstein-Barr, I can identify Epstein-Barr through the photograph and then locate it in this force field, in me, and eradicate it in the quantum field on the photograph. I can prove that there's a before and after signature of Epstein-Barr. If I had Epstein-Barr before the session, it's present. After the scalar light session, I have negated Epstein-Barr. It ceases to exist as a signature. I've disassembled it, or I brought it to a state of chaos. Are you with me?
Yeah, no, I'm following.
Tom,
I got a ton of questions against it, but yeah,
this
I'm
sounds a
following you.
lot like there's a book called The Study of Vibrational Medicine,
Yes.
written by an MD, Dr. Gerber, and he talks a lot about I think it's called vibronics, and a machine that had no power, but in a very similar fashion, you could use somebody's photo, you could use a slide with blood on it, you could use, I think there's stories of it being used as a farm equipment instead of pesticides, where you could put a certain bug on it and kill trees that were, remote to the machine. Is this similar?
Yes, my predecessor with Hieronymus, Galen Hieronymus, was working with farmers, and he would receive photographs from various farmers, and he was able to treat out a fungal blight in a cornfield or rid a farm field of pests, insects. Yes, because everything is energy, including an insect or a fungus has a specific energy field. Yes.
Okay.
You got
go ahead. All right.
Well, no, sorry, that freaking internet just stepped on it.
So, when you're treating for somebody, say Epstein-Barr, what does that look like? How often is that done? Is it a one and done? Is it a commitment? Is there a certain time that those photos are left there? Walk us through that, I guess.
I've worked with people with Epstein-Barr, and it only takes one day, one session, to identify Epstein-Barr as a force field and negate. Now, remember, when I'm working with forces, it's simply on or off. It simply exists or it ceases to exist. I don't work with the chemicals. The chemical process is drawn out. A chemical process involves many biological functions. This is not biochemistry. This is informational. It's simply a matter of turning on a switch or turning off a switch, turning on your computer or turning off your computer. If I had Epstein-Barr, I simply negate Epstein-Barr as a signature. That's it. One day, one session. Now, people report to me after I work with them, they no longer have the symptoms of Epstein-Barr. That's the key to my research, or if you will, testimonies. I can't measure the energy, but at least I can provide favorable testimonies.
So I guess the question there is like, you said that it would be a challenge for people to sort of replicate or prove. Okay. I can see why you would say that, and I can see how that's true. However, what I am struggling a little bit to understand is like, what's not hard to prove is removal of Epstein-Barr, which is highly traceable, highly trackable. I could absolutely get a blood test for this. I could absolutely this actually moves from the esoteric to the absolute, right? And so I'm curious, like, what is it about that hasn't helped you sort of push your research into a more favorable light, or any light? It seems like it's not even in any light, no pun intended, I guess. So.
The answer to the question is saying we have thousands of testimonies on our website. This is one of the testimonies.
Sure.
All
right. So somebody did get.
So somebody has done this. It's not. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Or either for Epstein-Barr, or for herpes, or for the HIV virus. Now, what's the point here?
I mean, I don't have herpes or HIV, but if I had either of those two things, I would probably stop at nothing to get rid of them, right? Yeah. Like, I mean,
I also feel like, it's absolutely something that it sounds like, if you don't even have to be there, if it's a photo, how easy is that? I mean, I also feel like, how many case studies do you have? Because I feel like that when you're talking in immeasurable things, unquantifiable things, the case studies are going to be the thing that makes you or breaks you. Are you collecting, like, because clearly you have results there? I mean, are you collecting those? Are they published everywhere? Are they
They're on my website. We have thousands of
okay.
Many of those are PCR tests. Now, it still begs the question,
Okay.
how did that happen? And nobody can explain that with electromagnetic theory. You have to develop a new train of thought. Scalar physics can only explain these events. Now, to follow that up, I'm not bashful about my results. I have thousands of testimonies on the website. So to cut to the chase, why isn't this headline news? Because it's free energy. That's why. And if I can
Right.
work with one person a day, or I can work with 1 million photographs a day, this becomes a global healing ministry.
And the same device you can have, because this energy is infinite. You're saying you could treat multiple people at once.
My goal is to eventually work with 1 billion photographs a year.
And
Now-
I think that, like, functionally, that sounds like it could happen. I guess just sort of a mechanical question for you. You have a desktop version of this, right? It's small, right? If I was to power my house on this, I would suspect I need something quite a bit larger than that and a bunch of other stuff happening. Like, I mean, does that same sort of mentality translate to one picture, 1 billion pictures?
Yeah, that's a good point. With this one instrument, I could easily work with 1 billion photographs in a year. Today in my lab,
Okay.
I work with 500,000 photographs. It was a piece of cake. I've been at this now for about 13, 14 years. I've amassed so many photographs. It was easy for me to work with 500,000 photographs today.
Now, do you need to know what's going on with that person, or simply by putting the photo in front of the device, is that enough?
Good question. There's no human reasoning. The energy is healing. The energy has all the information it needs. There's no thought process here. There's no human input. Yes, there's a technique that I have, but if you will, when I want to eradicate the signature for Epstein-Barr, all I need is a photograph of Epstein-Barr. I don't interpret the source. Every photograph has a fingerprint. Every photograph has a signature. I simply place these two photographs side by side one another, and the energy interprets the signature, finds it in me, and negates the Epstein-Barr signature in me. Without any...
But you would have to put that. You would have to know to have a photograph of Epstein-Barr. So, not to Tom's point.
Right, there's no diagnostics.
It's not diagnostic, but you would have to know that you're not
Okay.
treating Tom for herpes or HIV, but you're treating him for Epstein-Barr. Like that. At a minimum, you need to know that.
Yeah. So what have I done? Over the years, I've amassed 400,000 photographs of 400,000 species of germs, microbes. This is, if you will, a montage of 15 different...
So a spray and pray approach.
Yes. In 1 hour, I can take 400,000 photographs of microbes, download them into my quantum field, and eradicate the signal. There's never...
That's fascinating.
Yes, there's never any chemical die-off because it's not a chemical process. We're working with energy fields. There's no biological side effect. This is not biology. This is information.
And so I think one of the things that Tom and I have talked a lot about on this show is the sort of the idea of like, okay, I'm willing to try new things as long as it is not illegal, immoral, or
illegal is
risky.
a little bit looser.
Illegal is a little looser, yeah, right, a little less there. But like what we definitely say is like, if you're going to try something and it has a high propensity for damage, if it goes wrong, then that's probably not something worth trying. So this clearly falls in the like no harm, no foul category. Like, I mean, quite literally, you're not even with them, so like there'd be no imaginable way it would work. So when people work with you, I mean, I'm curious, like, obviously people find you for reasons which I suspect are more acute in nature, right?
Yeah, like a desperation, sheer desperation, I think. They'd be looking for any answer.
Right. Like, because I don't go to Scalar Light as like my first stop on, say, HIV remediation, right? Like, it's probably not where I start.
Right.
How do you sort of navigate that path for people coming to you? I'm curious how that interaction goes.
Yeah. Okay. So people are people. And in order for me to introduce this, I give away 15 days of free sessions on my website. And I think I should do that for everybody in the world, because this is cutting edge, brand new. It's never been done before. So I have an obligation to introduce this to people. That's my obligation. I'll treat everybody in the world for free for 15 days. And then only people can make that judgment if they want to move forward, if they think it's of merit. I don't blame people. I'd want to try a 15-day free trial.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. I'm very likely to try.
Is 15 days a full course of treatment? Is that an introductory? What can somebody, and I'm assuming this would be condition dependent as well, but would you see results, I guess?
Yeah, well, most people see favorable results within 15 days. Many people don't want to try this for a longer period of time than 15 days. So it is based. What type of psychological, spiritual, if you will, physical ailment a person has? I cannot make that decision. Again, as we discussed, I do not diagnose. I simply tell people, send me your photograph and I'll access the force field. That's the common denominator. It's not a biological diagnosis. Everybody has a force field, which is a first principle. You see, if medicine or every other science could only deal at the level of first principle, it'd be so much easier. Once you have to deal at the biological, deal with biochemical reactions, everybody's distinct. And there's hundreds of thousands of biochemical reactions. It's mind-boggling. So I don't have to deal with those permutations. You with me? There's only one variable.
Yeah.
Which is scalar light. Energy. I only have one option. I only want one option. Light, energy, which is the first principle. I don't have to worry about thousands of biochemical reactions.
So I guess back to the signature piece real quick. We're saying that like that light signature is unique in the universe, right? Like my signature is only for me. So it has no problem finding me.
That's correct. Okay.
Have you ever seen a movie called Jupiter Rising, by the way? It's a
I gotta watch that one all the way.
Yeah. So anyway, there's a movie called Jupiter Rising. It's an interesting situation, but planets are raised for billions of years until it reaches a maturity level, and then they're harvested for their essence. And that energy is then consumed by the race of people who created this. But there is a such thing as a genetic reprint in the universe, and it happens very, very infrequently because it's in almost infinite in potential. But there is a way where there could be two identical people. Like it could be on different planets, different solar systems, whatever. But I'm not to get too heady here, but like I'm just curious, like let's just use that as a documentary rather than a fantasy pick. Like, I mean, how unique are our scalar footprints, right?
I've treated identical twins, and the one person that I treated received the energy, the other person felt nothing. So to answer your question,
interesting.
Okay.
To answer your question, scalar energy
pretty fucking unique.
Yeah. Scalar energy is the mind of God. This is divine intelligence. Okay. And whatever photograph I place inside the instrument, divine intelligence knows each person. Not only each person, but the clothes that they're wearing, their genotype, their phenotype, their blood type. What's the point here? There's no human reasoning. That's why I'm so emboldened by my research. We're not working at the level where we make mistakes. No hard feelings, but people make mistakes. The scientific community makes mistakes.
Of course.
As long as I keep this with energy, energy never makes a mistake. Energy's flawless. Do you agree?
I don't know enough to agree or disagree.
I would tend
to say that I would think that is more true than not.
I would say it's probably neutral. I mean, there isn't a right or wrong if we're dealing with energy. Tom, you've definitely piqued my interest here because, like, if you're giving 15 days away free, let's walk me through it. Let's say we hop off this phone call. I go to your website. I send you the photo. If I don't have something, let's say, like pressing, or I don't have a heavy diagnosis, what might a let's say a healthy person, I don't want to use that term, but like what might somebody who feels pretty good notice?
Yeah. Many people say that their dream state enhances. Why? Remember, this is thought. Scalar energy will interface with our thoughts, with our 7 chakras. So people say that they sleep better without interruption. Their dream state is enhanced. Some people say that their skin is, if you will, clears up, or that their nails are stronger because the vitamins that we, if you will, impart by way of intelligence will create a stronger nail bed. This is what people tell me. Others will say that their sinuses clear up within a day or two. All of that is quite, if you will, evidentiary, and it bears out with our testimonies.
And honestly, I mean, this goes back to this sort of like endogenous energy cancellation that like I'm just fascinated at the overlap here, because even in both versions of the story, you're creating a chain reaction of energetics that results in something. This guy's definition of it is in fact accurate, or if it is a scalar side effect. Either way, it ends up in the same spot, right? Like, so it's kind of like one of those things where I'm like, well, it's interesting. And Tom Paladino, to your point, it would be nearly impossible to quote unquote prove, because what are you proving? There's nothing really to like, there's no touchable thing to prove there, right? I mean, outcome, I guess, but outcome without causation, yeah, it can't be quantified, right?
It cannot be quantified. Exactly. The only thing you can say, well, people feel better and they tell me they don't have a viral load for Epstein-Barr or herpes, or some people say that they're now in cancer remission. All of that is quite telling. Can it be explained by?
And is that what we're pushing
science?
for here, Tom? Is this like at a core outside of the treatment energy itself? Like, is this your sort of push, is to develop the vocabulary for this?
Yes, we have to. We have to. If scalar energy is the apple and electricity is the orange, you can only compare and contrast the two. The apple is the apple, the orange is the orange. We need 2 different languages. If we're speaking English, which is scalar energy, and electricity is Russian, well, those are 2 different languages, obviously. So we need a scalar energy.
And Tom, I love that we jumped right into this, but one thing we skipped over in the beginning is how the hell do you get into this? Like, I mean, where you weren't born. Yeah, you weren't born a scalar light junkie.
Yeah, we normally
got
ask
here,
how
but like,
you ended up
definitely
where you
didn't
are.
start
Yeah,
there, I'm sure of that. Okay.
I was an avid reader throughout my life. As a youngster, I read Tesla. And I said to myself, in some way, I want to work with Tesla in his instruments. I want to reproduce his work. I was fortunate enough when I was 33 years of age to meet an inventing family, the Hieronymus family. They're all inventors. I never met Galen, the father, but I met his daughter and his wife. Long story short, I was able to learn in person by practicing with their scalar energy instrument. Galen Hieronymus, by the way, he secured a U.S. and a Canadian patent for his work with scalar energy. So that was my introduction. And once God presented everything, put everything in my lap, it became rather obvious to me he wanted me to pursue this type of research. Everything came to me. It just flowed to me. So that was the Holy Spirit in action. And here I am today at the precipice of introducing a new, well, it's not new, but a quite
now is
unique
Hieronymus
energy
family
to mankind.
still active
Scalar
inventors?
energy, the
Are
energy
they
of the
part
stars.
of this journey with you, or no? Oh, bummer.
All deceased. Back in the 90s, they all died. And the family doesn't continue on with the legacy. So you're right. In many ways, they passed it on to me. They passed on the research.
Tom, that's great. How many of these units exist? And I guess the other question is, if one can do, nearly 1 billion people in a year, do you need more than one? You don't.
And the instrument's only are under my control. I've if you will, modified these instruments, if you will. I'm the only one in the world that I know publicly that is offering this type of session with these type of hieronymus instruments. Okay. Now, what do I envision in the future? It has to be a grassroots movement. Be quite candid. There are some governments, some corporations, some foundations that I do not trust. So if I keep this with the people, this will advance. This is a grassroots movement. That's the point of our discussion today, to, if you will, gain interest amongst the people.
And can I ask on this, because I've heard stories of people that have had Rife machines, and, you know, guys in black suits show up and say, give me this, or, you know, we'll go take it forcefully. Has there been any, I guess, concern for that, or any kind of weird circumstantial things that may have happened that were out of the ordinary, or is that something that maybe should not be discussed?
No, we can discuss that. I'll jump ahead here. I'm advised by a number of Catholic mystics, and these Catholic mystics tell me that Jesus and Mary are protecting me and just to move forward.
I actually am interested in that part for
next
week. We have somebody coming on to talk about how physics is slowly proving the existence of God, and I'm actually very curious to use this conversation as a sort of a backdrop for that. But it's also, again, I don't believe in coincidence. Yeah. It's a little weird that these two interviews are 1 week apart. Like exactly a week apart from one another.
It seems to be that we have reoccurring
Tom
themes.
and I are not smart enough to coordinate at this level. Let me just put it this way. There's no way.
Consider my earlier statement.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really just as people come on, and it seems to be that we'll hit a block, and somebody will say something 1 week that carries on for 3 or 4 weeks.
And listen, Tom, I mean, candidly,
you know,
I went to Catholic school,
we'll start like another
12,
cycle.
and so for me, the Catholic religion conversation is a bit prickly, and I'm not, you know, for reasons, you know, of my own, I guess, and certainly not important for this conversation. But I think that I guess I got a question for you there that sort of is decidedly religiously based, which is, and I want to preface this by saying I'm not trying to disrespect anybody's belief systems or anything, but what I am saying is, like, religion, in my view, has often been sort of the catch-all for unexplainable phenomenon, right? So in other words, I don't know what this is, therefore I call it God, right? And over the course of our evolution, that definition has gotten more narrow, and so we don't group in eclipses, and we don't, you know, the earth being round. Don't kill me, who forever's out there who doesn't believe that. But, you know, like, there's certain things that are no longer in the scope of God and have moved into the scope of explainable science. So I guess my question is you appear to be a spiritual guy. You appear to connect these two pieces of work. Yeah. Like, how do you sort of reconcile that?
Yeah, it's a good point. If the truth is reality, and reality is the truth, that's the benchmark I'm looking for. So if I can demonstrate by way of instrumentation that I can access infinite energy, then I construe there's an infinite supreme being that created that energy. It did not come, it's no accident. So what's the point? If we just look for the truth, okay, if that is, if you will, the Rosetta Stone we're looking for, then we have no problem. You can call it what you will. You can call it scientific truth, Catholic truth. You can call it political truth. The truth is reality. Reality is truth. That's all I try to do as a researcher. When I have favorable results from people, because I'm working with a scientific instrument that follows the laws of science, then I realize I'm on the path to truth, reality. And that is the hallmark of my career. This is not a psychic event. There's no human input here. This is an energy instrument that follows the laws of science that are immutable. That's why I say energy never makes a mistake. The laws are immutable. And if the laws are immutable, you can't change those immutable
I guess,
laws.
Just a follow-up question. Do you have a scientific background at all? Or what? Well, I mean, what did you, before you dumped all of your energy into this, like, were you a physicist or something? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
okay.
Let's say I was on my way to becoming a physicist. I was in my collegiate career spanned close to 15 years.
Okay.
I had a thorough understudy of many sciences. But once in my 30s, I wanted to really pursue scalar energy, and I realized that academia does not have the answers. Academia is ignoring this energy. So I decided to do this. So from, say, age 30 on, it's all been private research. It's autodidactic. I'm self-taught. God has taught me. Why? Everything I'm doing is groundbreaking.
I mean, are you
there is
attempting,
no college
or do you have
textbook.
plans to attempt to sort of codify this in some kind of, maybe not textbook, but some sort of tome that would explain the research?
Yes. I'm writing monographs as I move along, and I have to have if you will, some groundswell of support. Otherwise, see, I'm very careful. Tesla was derided, and his work is poorly understood. My predecessor, Galen Hieronymus, you're not going to find hardly anything on him. He never wrote a book, and so what's the point here? This is poorly understood. It's poorly attended. So I'm trying to, with my public website and with public appearances like this, to at least broach the subject, to get it out there. One man cannot introduce a science. Scalar science is vast. It's
and frankly,
one
I mean, along
researcher,
those
Tom
lines, I
Paladino,
guess,
cannot do
the
it on his
Tesla
own.
actually, I don't know if you've seen Neil deGrasse Tyson's refute of Terrence Howard's 36-page diatribe online. But it's super fascinating because Neil frames it in a way that I thought was super gentle, but also sort of a very firm bitch slap of saying, hey, look, just because you're passionate about something doesn't make you right. And Terrence Howard is sort of, he's an actor, not to say that doesn't mean he couldn't be a insightful physicist, but his life work is acting, and he is attempting through this 36-page thing to reinvent certain math, right? Like just literally outright invent it. And he calls out the misunderstood and unverified work of
physics,
Tesla specifically, and a bunch of other guys who actually didn't make anything out. I mean, at least Tesla had some measure of success, right? Like, but even Neil's take on that was saying, well, look, the guy's got a unit of measure named after him. He's clearly a fucking rock star in physics. Like, you don't get that just by accident, right? Like, he's obviously brilliant and he had a huge contribution. But huge swaths of his work were absolute lunacy and completely unproven, right? And so, and the lens by which the yardstick by which he measured that was peer-reviewed journals. So I guess where I was going with this was to say, like, where you have something like your, Galen Hieronymus, right? Like, those guys seem like they were scientifically based. Like, did they even try to peer review any of this stuff? Like, I mean, how far down the rabbit hole have we already gone?
Yes, they have, but it's been ignored. And my point is, after a century of Tesla, Hieronymus, and there's been a few other scalar energy researchers, when you don't hear anything about this in mainstream media,
or prove it,
because the Rockefellers do not want you
evaluated
to know that.
and dismissed.
This is no accident.
Nonsensical. Like, I mean, I guess I'm not trying to be insulting, but those are two different things, right? Like, I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's use the term the one world order, the power structure today. And power structure does not want people to realize that free energy exists. Free energy would dismantle the military-industrial complex. So this nefarious group of world leaders does not want the competition of free energy. Tesla was derided. Hieronymus is ignored. Another man, Moray, demonstrated free energy. Why aren't these men headline news? That free energy would solve our problems, including the green revolution. Well, it's the same problem that I have. I have great results, but it will upset the apple cart. Let's just be frank about that. Now, to your previous question, the dialectic between two physicists,
Right. Yeah.
I don't get involved in that because that's an endless discussion. It's an endless. And, it's like he said, she said, okay.
No, it's not
I
time.
It's
it's just like sort of like he said,
no
Einstein
I have no time or
proved out relativity through the peer review process. Like it was absolutely like it was initially considered batshit crazy. Like everyone was like, Einstein, you're fucking nuts. And then it moved into like, okay, well, we got to at least check this out. This guy won't shut up about it. And then it was like, oh, fuck, he actually might be right. And then it went to, nope, he was absolutely dead on. And now we've got a whole new way of looking at the universe, right? But that process was absolutely not like Einstein wasn't Einstein when he worked at the patent office, right? He was just some whack job who had some crazy ideas that somebody had to then take seriously. So I guess, listen, I'm a practical guy, Tom. I've been in marketing for 30 years and I deal in very concrete terms. I also do this show, so I have a latitude, if you will. But here's my point. Scalar energy and getting Neil deGrasse Tyson to buy into it and do a peer-reviewed journal on scalar healing and stuff, I get it. That's a tall order and probably not going to happen, right? That's very, very, very hard. What's not hard to happen is you build a device, a scalar collection device that powers your house. That's demonstrable and it's immediate, right? Like, and that's like that. And again, I guess this is maybe a question / suggestion, but if we're looking at what moves the military industrial complex, it's evidentiary examples, right? It's saying like, hey, I built this thing. It's on my roof. And I haven't paid an electric bill in a year. Like that. Like that's something that's like, oh, really? Why? Well, I built this crazy fucking device.
Very good. I think I'm 3 to 4 years away from taking this energy, amplifying it to the point that I can illuminate a building. Yeah. If I can light up a building, you'll know it, and everybody.
Yeah, then you're in. Yeah.
On planet Earth will know that. As for the time being, for people to accept that a photograph has a force field and I can access their force field and produce a force field effect upon their force field, which is their aura, that's difficult. I realize because that's invisible. Let's face it. If I can light up a building, that's visible. So these are the impediments that I'm up against right now, and I'm well aware of that.
And I got to tell you, after today's conversation, I'm not convinced that you're on the right route, right? Like I actually agree with Tom. You've definitely piqued my interest. I guess in the meantime, how are you sort of perpetuating this? Is it private grants, or do you make enough in these sort of post 15-day things that you can kind of fund your research? Like how is the research getting perpetuated?
I barely get by it. I've never looked at this as a business model.
No, but humans need food and a place to stay. So, like, I mean, at some level, you need to and you need to buy some materials for vacuum tubes to build scalar machines.
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, okay. No, I'm just curious. I mean, research is one of those tricky things, man. I've got a million projects that I barely get research, but it takes X dollars to do it. Yeah, it takes funding to do it, and that's tough, right? Especially the more sort of
it takes funding,
stretchy the idea is, the harder it is to kind of get people to buy in. And I think that this is about as stretchy of an idea as it gets, right? I mean, this is
Thank you. Yeah. Yes, you're absolutely right, because I'm not working with people. I'm working with a different dimension that people exist in, which is the force field. It's just there's so many hurdles to overcome. So if this so in let's say 3 to 4 years, if this becomes headline news, well, at least you have this interview in your archive.
I want you to be right. Now, listen, right.
His theories are proving
I'm swinging for you, buddy. And for multiple reasons. One is I
want you to be right too, man.
Breaking it down for me, I believe that there is a lot that we don't understand, right? And one of the reasons why yesterday's conversation resonated with me and why I'm so excited that it is now reinforced less than 24 hours later is that we we just don't know what we don't know, right? Like, and that's it. And like, I think like dark matter, there's other stuff, and we're only now getting to a point where we realize that there's stuff we don't know, right? 50 years ago, we weren't asking those questions, right? Dark matter wasn't a thing because no one gave a shit. We're like, hey, I don't care, right? Now it's more of a thing.
Yeah.
Why is the universe so fucking heavy if all of the stuff we see doesn't weigh that much, right? Like, well, that means there's other stuff out there, right? But that's an evolved question, right? And I think that when you look across the vast swath that Tom and I get to the extreme privilege to be a part of, every one of these topics of conversation is getting deeper and wider, right? People are asking better questions. They're understanding what they don't know. You know, Tom's got a PhD in Chinese medicine. Like, I mean, that's thousands of years old. And they're still sort of wondering, you know, like Tom learns and assimilates new ideas on this show. I see him do that every single show we have, right? And so like but we know how to ask good questions. Huh? Well, I think we all learn something every day here, and I think when you're primed to ask better questions,
I've been pretty quiet on this one, haven't
I? And I think, Tom, one of the things that I love about your topic of study is that it is touching that unknown that we know exists. We just don't have a vocabulary to sort of articulate it. So I want you to be right. I definitely want you to be right.
Yeah, Tom.
Who've studied China.
Tom, do you want to wrap this up for us? Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm going to wrap this up by saying,
close it up.
Those who've studied Chinese medicine realize there's chi or prana. That's a scalar wave that was photographed, time-lapse photography.
A spinal column.
What does that remind you of?
And a hip.
Take a good look. What does that remind you of?
Oh, wow. Okay.
Our DNA is created by scalar energy. If I can have a scalar wave and as a template recreate or reprogram DNA, I'll have great success. Recently, I've worked with 100 people who have cancer. They sent me their photograph. Most of those people are in remission.
I got to ask the obvious question here. Is there any sort of Western treatment paradigm that they have in common, or a disease state that they entered it? Yeah.
Yeah. Are they doing both Western and this, or is it solely scalar energy?
Some of them are on chemo. Some of them are not.
And is their disease progression reasonably similar, or like, I mean, are these all? Again, my suspicion is people don't find you unless they're literally out of options.
Yeah, I get it. Most of those people tell me they feel better, their appetite has returned, and they went back for a physical exam. There's no sign of cancer. Cancer's in remission. Now that's 100 people from different backgrounds, from 3 or 4 continents, if you will, different age groups, et cetera, et cetera. This is very promising, but it's always anecdotal because you'll never be able to measure the energy. There's no common language, scalar energy.
Yeah.
Can you prove that a person has a force field? Well, that's one of the things we have to prove immediately. Nobody can prove a scalar energy force field. Nobody has proved scalar energy. So it's going to be free in faith.
And again, faith could be a synonym for the placebo
faith
effect, right? Like that we were talking about, like a belief that it is working and therefore it will. Well, again, that's not to reduce what you're saying into, base terms, but it is to say like vocabulary is tricky in this one, right? Like it's not a straight line. I mean, faith is a loaded word these days, right? It doesn't mean placebo, right? In a strict sense, it's got a whole bunch of other implications, right? And so that sort of muddies, in my opinion, that probably muddies your water even more, because now you're sort of, making that word faith, which isn't really sciencey, right? Like it's.
Let's go back 200 years before electricity, and people would say a static, or I received a shock, or I see lightning.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting.
There was no vocabulary 200 years ago. That's where scalar energy is. Yeah, there's a phenomenon out there that we call scalar energy, a plasma field that the stars are
I
animated
mean, Tom,
by. What
I
is
love
that?
that you walked us through
So
this because
there's a lot
honestly,
has
this
to
is
be
one
done.
of those topics that's a little hard to take at face value, and it is awesome to have sort of more education around this because, quite frankly, there's not a lot out there. so this has definitely been awesome. So I guess what's helpful for you to send people to the URL that Tom keeps blasting out there, the scalarlight.com. Is that sort of the best place to find you?
Exactly. We have to
I'm
start.
not going to lie. I'm
Start
very
at the
curious about
15-day
this.
free session. That's a proving ground.
I'm like, what
Prove
can
it to
what
yourself.
could be wrong with me that I need to like do for a couple days to?
I think I'm going to do it.
This,
I think I'm going to do
definitely
it.
Curious. I mean, I mean, like Tom, just a stupid question. I mean,
By
like
all
somebody
means.
breaks their arm,
All right,
do
well-
they come to you with something like that? I mean, or is that just too like mechanical? Yeah, right. Yeah, okay. I figured. I was just curious. I'm
Nothing
like,
structured.
okay.
Nothing mechanical.
Well, listen, man, I appreciate your time, Tom. Anything we forgot to ask him? No, okay, gotcha. Well, listen, I'm gonna probably play with this a little bit more. I know
so.
Tom's definitely gonna. I mean, he's already got the submit form up on the on the page. So, all right, Tom Paladino, scalarlight.com.
Let's kick the tires.
Yeah, I'd love to get follow along, man. I mean, you know, best case scenario, in a year from now, you are in Scientific American, and we're like way back when we had him on the show. I can't wait to hopefully do that. Listen, 100%. That's
Good luck,
not even.
man.
Why don't you bring me back in a
that's
couple
100%.
years? Just keep
So.
that in mind.
All right, guys, listen, enjoy the weekend. Thanks
We
again, Tom,
definitely
for
will.
coming
We
by,
definitely
and
will.
we'll see you guys next time. All right, take care.
Okay. Take care, Tom.
Thank you.
Be subversive, irreverent.
Health is wealth, but you knew that.
Everybody knows that.
But so is following us on social media at Irreverent Health. And check out our website for more exclusive content at irreverenthealth.com.
Oh, I like this.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Irreverent Health.